Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We are learning Mishnah is Shabbos, Perek Aleph, Chapter 1, up to Mishnah Yudalef, Mishnah 11. I've dedicated this morning's learning in memory of my mother, it's Shalamas Rabinowitz, Shalamas plus Rebecca Eliezer. Okay, so the Mishnah continues with more examples that relate to the issue that we started with yesterday, that under certain circumstances we're concerned that you may stoke a fire to get the fire to go big, to be bigger. So now the case is like this. We can lower the carbon Pesach into the stove as it's getting dark. Now the carbon Pesach was slaughtered on Erev Pesach, the 14th of Iyar, and typically it was roasted and eaten on the night after, which is the 15th, I say Iyar, Nisan, and typically it was the following night that it was roasted on Yontif. You could roast the carbon Pesach on Yontif itself, and then eat it on Yontif on the night of the 15th. But what happens if it comes out that Pesach falls out on Shabbos? So then the 14th is Erev Shabbos, is Friday, and you slaughter it on Friday, and you actually have to roast it on Friday, or at least begin its process on Friday, because being that it's Shabbos, it's Pesach is Shabbos, the mitzvah of roasting the carbon Pesach does not override the prohibition of cooking on Shabbos. So therefore, the roasting part has to take place before Shabbos. So either you roast it completely before Shabbos, or the Mishnah now says that even close to Shabbos, you could already start roasting it then. And the wording that's used is we lower the carbon Pesach. The reason we use the word lower is because, they were roasting this not necessarily over an open fire. It was roasted in an oven. And they had, and the oven had a narrow top and a wide bottom. So they had to lower it into the oven. So now Mishnah is saying that when Pesach is on Shabbos, you can lower the carbon Pesach into the stove as it's getting dark. Now, yesterday when we spoke about roasting and cooking, we said it has to be partially cooked before you cannot be concerned anymore with stoking the fire. Mm-hmm. There is no condition. That detail is not here. It doesn't say that. All it says is that you can lower it into the fire close to Shabbos, which means that as long as you lower it before Shabbos, even though most of the roasting is going to happen on Shabbos itself, doesn't make a difference. Why aren't we not concerned about the fact you may come to stoke the fire because you wanted to roast quicker to be ready for the Seder? And the answer is because a carbon Pesach was typically done as a group, right? It was a group that got together over an animal. And when we're talking about a group getting together and they're dealing with a carbon, in that situation, they're going to be careful. And if one person forgets himself and starts going over to the fire to stoke it, the other person is going to say, is going to scream, Shabbos, right? Mm-hmm. And they're going to remind you. So that's the point. The point here that carbon Pesach, if you're an individual just, roasting food, we're afraid you're going to forget and stoke the fire. Here by carbon Pesach, where you're not an individual doing it, you're typically doing it with a group of other people. And we're not just talking about doing anything. We're talking about, they add this here in the commentary, that, and people are especially careful with their actions when dealing with sacrificial offerings. You got a group of people are especially careful when it comes to the bringing of karbanos. And therefore, in this situation, if one person starts forgetting, he's about to stoke it because he forgot it, someone's going to remind him and stop him. And therefore, when it comes to the carbon Pesach, as long as you have lowered it into the fire before Pesach, before Shabbos begins, you're okay with it roasting over Shabbos.
They roasted it out on a spit, and then they're putting it into an oven?
No. They roasted it in the oven.
They roasted
the fire was in the oven. It wasn't an open.
It wasn't an open.
It didn't have to be. Didn't have to be, at least. No.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Next. And we can light the bonfire that was in the fire chamber in the Beis Hamikdash. Now there was a special room in the Beis Hamikdash where there was a fire always burning. What was it there for? It was there to warm up the Kohanim. The Kohanim worked barefoot on a marble floor, and it chilled them. So therefore, they always had a room with fire to warm themselves up.
This is for practical purposes.
Very practical, and it was this is all year round. Now, we say if you got to light the fire, the Beis HaMikdash, if you got to light the fire of that chamber, you can go ahead and do it right before Shabbos. Now, why not? Now we're going to see soon that if you're not talking about the Beis HaMikdash on an individual, you can't just start the fire right before Shabbos. We're afraid you may stoke it. We're afraid you may add, wood chips to it for it to burn better. So in the Beis HaMikdash, though, we're not concerned about that because Kohanim is Rizmein. Kohanim are very careful people. The Kohanim of the Beis HaMikdash were very meticulous in their observance, very aware of everything that they were doing, and therefore we're not concerned. So even here, if a single Kohen were to be lighting that fire, to relight that fire or light more of wood in that fire, even if it was a single Kohen, there's other Kohanim around. Before, by the Karban Pesach, we say other people are around. That's when you can do it. If other people are around, then you can go ahead and just lower it right before Shabbos because they'll remind you. But here by the Kohanim, you don't need other Kohanim there. You can have one Kohen. But that one Kohen, since Kohanim is Rizimim, since Kohanim are very meticulous and careful, we're not concerned that they're going to forget about Shabbos and, stoke it or add wood chips to it. Ubagavulin. But if you're in the borders, which means you're outside of the Beis HaMikdash, and you want to light a bonfire, you want to light a bonfire. You have to make sure that the fire takes hold of the majority of the wood. So you got this wood burning, right? It's going to be a wood fire. You've got to make sure that the majority of the wood is aflame, and then you can leave it be. And we're not concerned you're going to stoke it anymore. Now, what that means is enough so that you have the fire burning in the majority of the wood means that the fire has taken hold of the wood in a way that it's just going to burn on its own. I'm just finding the way they explained it here. Right. So the flame now rises on its own, and there is no need to bring additional chips of wood or to stoke the fire. You light enough of it, the fire has already taken hold enough of the wood that's going to continue burning on its own. It's not going to need any help. That's what it means. The majority of the wood is aflame. It means you've lit enough of the wood so that now the flame rises on its own and there's no need to help it out. So therefore, again, if you're not in the Beis HaMikdash and you're lighting the fire, even in a group, right? Well, I shouldn't say that. Well, yeah, I would say that even in a group, because this is not a group involved in a carbon, as mentioned before, so that could be a difference. But the bottom line is that lighting the bonfire in the room in the Beis HaMikdash for the Kohanim to do it, they can just start lighting it right before Shabbos. When it comes to outside of the Beis HaMikdash, you want to light a bonfire, it's got to be able that you've lit the wood enough that the flame rises on its own, and it's not going to need any more help. Rabbi Yehuda says, if you're talking about using charcoal, then already all you have to do is light a little bit. Because talking about charcoal, once you get it lit, it's going to spread. You don't got to worry about it anymore. And the Bartanura points out that nobody argues on Rabbi Yehuda about this. There's no argument. And therefore, the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. So if you're talking about using wood, you have to be concerned. You may stoke, you may add wood chips. But if you're talking, therefore, you got to make sure that it's already lit to the point that the flame will be able to rise on its own and doesn't need any help. But once so if you just light a little bit of it, that's not not good. But when it comes to the charcoal, once you just light a little bit of it and the fire has taken hold of a little bit, you don't have to be concerned anymore. It's going to spread, and there's no concern about stoking it or adding anything to it to keep the fire going, to make the fire burn. Have a wonderful day.
Thank
you, Rabbi.